Recording in progress.
Hello. Alright, so today this video is going to be about what I have observed in the last year and 3 months about my connection with my body and mind, and just little things you can take with you in your mind-body connection journal, journey. Sorry, I'm working on a mind-body connection journal, and I was thinking about it as I was talking. It would be cool if I could have that published by the end of the year. So when I do journaling for the mind-body connection, what I tend to do is if I have like an ache or a pain, I will go ahead and Google metaphysical cause of, I don't know, backache, metaphysical cause of lower backache, metaphysical cause of upper backache, spiritual cause of backache, or like if it was like wrist pain, spiritual cause of wrist pain, metaphysical cause of wrist pain. That's what I do. And then I go through and I read several articles about it, and I take what resonates and I leave the rest, and then I take all of that to my journal, and I do my journal online, so sometimes I'll copy and paste some of the things that resonated, so that way I can reflect on it as I journal. And I'll set the intention as I journal that I set the intention that as I journal that I connect with my body and I release these aches and pains that are going on in my body. And through journaling, I'm mentally connecting with my physical, and this is my way of bridging the gap between the mind and the body. And I've been doing this, like I said, a year and 3 months, and so much has changed for me. My body has improved so much. My relationship with my body has improved. My relationship with my intuition has improved. I've started incorporating it into my Reiki sessions. My Reiki sessions tend not to be sessions for relaxation. They tend to be more like geared towards those wanting to do their self-work and self-healing. And so, yeah, like, sorry, my Zoom like disconnected. So yeah, I tend to incorporate flower essences into my Reiki sessions, and then with the flower essences, I'll also kind of have my client engage with their body, like is there a tight spot in your body, is there a heavy spot, and then we'll kind of go through and identify it and work it out of the body, which is proving to be very interesting to me and helpful to the clients. So yeah. But anyways, so some of the body parts we're going to talk about, I can't cover the whole body because our bodies are pretty expansive, and take what resonates, leave the rest. And this is like a video to kind of make it tangible for you how to work with the mind and body. There's a lot of ways to do it, but I find this way very helpful for me because I have a very analytical mind, so I like to identify things and label them and write them down and work through them. So journaling. So one that I've noticed with shoulders, shoulders tend to have pain when we're not feeling supported in our life, or when we're feeling burdened, or like we took on too much, or very literal meanings like the weight of the world on your shoulders. Really interesting for me, before I was aware of mind-body connection, I remember I tore my right rotator cuff 2 days before my second hip surgery, and the whole time was like such a nightmare for my body. Looking back, I'm now like, oh, this is the conversation my body was trying to have with me, and meanwhile all I did was bitch at my body and treat it even worse than it already felt. Like, you know, I wish I had been more mindful back then, but these are things that we are not taught out here in the West. So anyways, I tore my right rotator cuff, and looking at that point in my life, right side symbolizes your masculine energies, and my dad and I have been ongoing with like miscommunication and not getting along and bickering and just not having a strong emotional safe connection at all, pretty much the whole time I've known him. But there was a lot of escalation in that with my hip surgeries because he basically ghosted me after my first hip surgery, and then when I asked him for help with my second hip surgery, he like wouldn't oblige, and I know it doesn't entirely have to do with him. It also has to do with my stepmom, but my dad is the one that I talk to. And so masculine energies, and at that time I was not being supported by him. And so my rotator cuff got shredded. And then at that time also, like, the person I was with was not being very supportive either. So another masculine not supporting me. And then all of my brothers had like been very unsupportive during my hip surgeries as well. And so all of that just manifested in like a huge injury. And yeah, like I wasn't listening to my body at that time. And then it's interesting because this person that I work with, she was talking about how her left shoulder had started hurting recently. And I was like, how long ago did it start hurting? And she was like, oh, about a week ago. And I was like, oh, really? I was like, that's the feminine side of your body. Is there anyone that you feel unsupported by in your life? And then she was like, oh my God, yeah, it's like our boss. Like, she's been so like mean and nitpicking and blah, blah, blah. And she's like, I don't know why she keeps coming at me the way she does, which is actually exactly why I left that job. But I thought it was so fascinating because it manifested in her shoulder. And then she was also saying that she was having foot pain, like on the outer side of her, it goes her left foot also, which when we looked at a reflexology chart, the location was the shoulder. So the body really does talk to us, and it's trying to get our attention, and it doesn't help when you're like, oh, my stupid body, blah, blah, blah. Like, no, your body's not stupid. It's quite intelligent. It's trying to bring to attention things you're not acknowledging where you're perhaps being kind of stupid. So it's interesting how hers manifested. And so, yeah, hers was like a manifestation of feeling unsupported by a female employer figure in her life, and then mine was being unsupported by male family figures in my life. So yeah, that's one example of mind-body stuff. And another one is headaches. Headaches can be just like from being overwhelmed in general. However, for me personally, I've noticed I get headaches more often than not. It's usually when I have a contradiction in my actions and beliefs. Every now and then I do get like menstrual headaches, usually for like a day out of my cycle, and that, like, I won't try to journal about it. I know that's part of my cycle. However, headaches, yeah, they tend to be contradictions in beliefs, and they force you to kind of get real with yourself and take off any self-denial lenses you might be wearing about yourself. And so, I mean, a denial in action and belief could be something like, oh, I don't believe in gossiping. It's not a healthy habit to get into. And then you're now talking to your coworker about another coworker, and then now you have a headache. And it's as simple as that. Like, if you don't normally stand for gossip and then you're doing it, like, your body's like, hey, you're not being authentic to yourself. Like, ding, ding, like, I'm going to make you pay attention. Or you could have like a headache because, I don't know, like right now we have like the vaccination. So like, let's say you're not for vaccinations and you don't believe in that, and then you're forced into a vaccination, and then you notice you have like this headache, and it could be that like you went against your belief and you did an action that was not authentic to you, and your body's like, hey, contradiction, you know. Or it could be a side effect of the vaccine. But I mean, for the case of this example, let's just say it's a contradiction in action and belief. Or I don't know, you could be in a relationship where like you have core beliefs and values, and you just had this conversation with like the person you're dating, and you realize that there's some core beliefs and values that they have that do not align with you, that like are deal breakers for you, and then you stay in this relationship and you notice you start getting migraines or something. That could be a huge sign, like, hey, not in alignment with action and beliefs. So that would be headaches. An interesting one was heels. My fiance and then a female friend of mine both had problems with their heels, and it was the same heel, it was the left side. And very interesting to me. Like when I looked up the heal stuff, like it was talking about mother figures and having trouble moving forward, and anything feet or heels has to do with moving forward. But the heel was very specific about the mother figure. And so I thought it was really fascinating because I know both of these people are very, very attached to their mothers. And they both ended up having their heel issues start when they got engaged, which I thought was really, really fascinating because when you're getting married, like the female roles in your life change. Like there's a whole hierarchy and family dynamics and constellations just change. And so um, both of these people, I think, might have had like some type of inner resistance to the direction they were moving forward in, just because maybe they were worried that they wouldn't be accepted as much by their mom, or maybe not accepted as much by their spouse, or maybe they weren't certain in how to navigate these role changes and stuff coming up with marriage. Like it's just very interesting. Which with my fiance, like we did some Reiki with EFT tapping and flower essences, and then the next day he did cord work with his psychotherapist, and all of this actually we did based around moving. Well, I don't know what their intention was, but for our stuff we did it based around moving forward and the mother energy and all of that, and his heel pain did lessen, and then the cord work that he did also lessened it, which there was cord work done with his mom. So very, very interesting. Not sure how my friend managed to clear her heel, because that was a while back and I wasn't aware back then. It's just interesting looking back now. So yeah, another one that's really common and easy to spot in people is like lower back pain. A lot of people are like, oh, I pulled my back, or oh, like I just slept funny, or people always justify their injuries as something physical and logical because they're like not trained to think of the mind body connection and the emotional. So yeah, the back pain is interesting because if you get past like that whole analytical side and justifying it all, like you can like kind of hone in on what started it emotionally or energetically. And lower back pain usually has to do with finances. Sometimes it can have to do with like family members and family relationships, depending on like what part of the lower back it is. But most times, from my observations with myself, as well as my observations with like other people, strangers and friends, it does have to do with financial stress. And it was really interesting because during the holidays, working at the brewery, I had like a handful of different people tell me that their lower back was really hurting, and then I was like, oh, did you just like spend a large amount of money somewhere? And they were like, oh yeah, I splurged on this gift for my family, or oh yeah, I had to put this on layaway, or and it was all like financial stuff around the time frame that like their backs started hurting. Which even for me, when I started when I was doing my taxes this year for the first time with my sole proprietor, my lower back went ape shit, and like I knew exactly what was going on. I was like, there's nothing wrong with my back at all. Like it's just my body's like, oh my god, taxes are so stressful, and like I had to like sit with it and be like, hey, it's okay, like we're just doing taxes, we'll be fine, like you know. So yeah, the lower back pain is finances. Eyesight's an interesting one too. So I've heard in a couple of different talks that eyesight, children start to lose their eyesight and vision usually about 2 years after something happens in their reality that they don't like and that is not like good for them. And so it's really interesting because when I started wearing glasses, I started wearing glasses about 2 years after my biological mother left me. And yeah, like, I mean, and they say that, like, what happens is, like, the child tries to control their reality by distorting their vision and blurring what it is they don't like seeing in their reality. And so it makes a lot of sense to me. And then another person that I talked to, they said that about 2 years after their brother went away to college, they started wearing glasses because it was really hard for them to see their sibling go away. And like this little boy that I knew that was like almost legally blind in foster care, like he had a really rough family background. I mean, I can guess that what he saw from his family in his early years is probably what led to him becoming legally blind. Um, and I mean, I realize that as we get older, our bodies start to deteriorate. So I realize some people start to lose their eyesight as they get older, but I also think some people, when they lose their eyesight, as they get older, it might be because they're going through that midlife crisis and they have all these regrets and things they're looking back at that they're like not happy with. So it's just interesting to think about. Another one would be like TMJ and jaw clenching. For the longest time, I thought it had to do with, like when I first got into energy healing, I thought it had to do with not speaking my truth. And so I did a lot of journaling on speaking my truth and stuff like that. And it took me a long time to figure out what speaking your truth really means. However, in the since October, my jaw clenching has come back, and it's been interesting because I've been like reading more about like the mind-body connection, and I've discovered that it has a lot to do with intense pressure and decision making. Which when my jaw clenching was really bad several years ago, it was when I was having my hip surgeries, and it was when I was preparing for a big move, and there was a lot of decisions and a lot of pressure all over the board, so it makes so much sense. And then my jaw clenching stopped once like the surgeries were pretty much over, because the decisions had been made. And so now it's interesting to me because my jaw clenching started up again in October. And while some of it does have to do with like having fillings that weren't put in properly, and grinding those down to a better bite, I do realize that some of it actually has to do with getting married. Like, I mean, there's a lot of decisions that go into planning a wedding, and then there's a lot of decisions that come up like with the coming together of families and stuff like that. So I realized there was a lot of that, and then I realized that there's been a lot of self-imposed pressure on me as I'm in the midst of switching jobs and working on my business, and I've been doing some EFT tapping along with journaling to help me release this pressure and indecisiveness from my body, and to give myself permission to be not under pressure, and to give myself permission to be indecisive. Like, decisions can wait, they don't have to happen right away. I don't have to clench my jaw and hurt my teeth for that, you know. And I mean, I know a few other people with TMJ, and knowing some of their backgrounds, I can definitely see like pressure and indecisiveness in their lives too. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And then another one that I wrote down, I think this is going to be, well, we'll talk about this one on one more. Another one that I wrote down was carpal tunnel. And it's interesting because back in the day when I wasn't aware of my connection with my body, when I was living in Denver for 4 years, I had really intense like wrist pain, really, really intense. And it was on my right side. And for the longest time, I was very logical, and I blamed it on the cheese grater at work, which I'm sure caused some ish, but like it wasn't the whole thing. Usually our higher selves create these situations externally to show us what's going on internally. So anyways, it was interesting because it was my right wrist, and at that time, like my dad and I were having so many communication issues. There was so much fresh pain and raw pain that was going on in my life, and I was just like ugly bleeding from the heart with everything that was going on in my life at that time with him. And so yeah, my wrist like was like super uncomfortable. I wore braces all the time and all this stuff. But then it was interesting because then I moved away from Colorado, and the wrist pain stopped because I wasn't interacting with my dad anymore. But then when I had my first hip surgery, I noticed my left wrist started hurting, and that was when my biological mom disowned me, and there was a lot of harsh words that were said between us. And looking back at my whole journal, I even talked about how I was like, oh, I think my wrist has to do with stress, or oh, my hip is hurting and I think it's stress. So it's like unconsciously, I think I knew it had something to do with emotions. I was just scratching at the surface back then. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, because they say the wrists have to do with communication issues with the masculine right side, or feminine energy left side, or it could even be communication issues within your own energies of your masculine and feminine if you're not really balanced. And it's interesting because I know of a certain older person that has really intense carpal tunnel in both wrists, but if I remember correctly, it's more pronounced in his right wrist. And I know that he had extremely tense relations with his father, and there was a lot of communication issues with them, and a lot of regret and sorrow that came with those communication issues for this person. And this person has not really come to peace or worked through that yet, so they still have issues in their wrist. And the final one that I'll talk about is like the knees. The knees have to do with also forward motion, but they also symbolize like being too rigid or inflexible about going forward. And right side masculine, left side feminine. And like I remember when I fell off of a wall not that long ago, my right knee started hurting really bad, and then I was like, all right, let me journal about it. And what came up for me was I was being very rigid in wedding planning at the time, and like because my pain was so like fresh and bubbling up, a lot of stuff was coming up that I didn't expect to come up when I got engaged. And so I realized I was being kind of a Grinch with the wedding planning, and I was kind of raining on some of the material things that Chris was looking forward to. And I was being very rigid and inflexible. And through injuring my knee, I was able to think about it and correct it. And I journaled about it a couple of times, and then my knee pain went away. And then, I mean, my therapist the other day, we did a reevaluation, and she was asking me, she's like, how is your tailbone doing these days? Because there for a while it was hurting me like every single day. And I was like, oh, it's actually like doing pretty good. Like I don't really have any like pain from it unless like I need to make a decision. And then she was like, well, how cool of a superpower is that? Like your body just kind of tells you what's up, and then you like roll with it. Which I was like, that's so true. It is like a superpower, you know? Because yeah, tailbone pain goes with it can do with root chakra stuff, but for me it more often has to do with I'm sitting on pain or I'm sitting on a decision that I need to make. And usually if I journal about it through different angles, I can get to the root of it and it'll clear. So yeah, like it's really cool the conversations our body has with us if we just allow ourselves to listen. Like the body is not a nuisance. It does not try to hurt us. It's trying to deepen its relationship with us because we chose to incarnate in these physical vessels for a reason. And we need to honor and respect them, and stop treating them as separate from like the mind and the spirit and all that. We're all one, and to work and live a life in harmony, we need to heal our relationships with all of our bodies. So anywho, I hope this video has been helpful for you. Yeah, feel free to follow me on Instagram at Flow and Glow Reiki, or follow me on Facebook at facebook.com/Flow and Glow Reiki. You can also shop my Etsy and purchase flower essences that might help you heal and expand upon your mind-body connection. And keep an eye peeled for whenever I do release this mind-body journal that I'm working on. Thank you so much for watching. Namaste, aho, and take care.